Hey guys, it's MakeRed2 here. I found this Red Ice TV video on YouTube, and I figured we'd take a look at it and see what they have to say, and then we'll play a little bit of Dark Souls. But for now, let's get started on this bad boy. So Red Ice TV is why white people aren't having kids. Yeah, so I've seen a little bit of the video, the first couple of minutes, just to kind of get a little bit of the flavor of the video, and we're going to respond to this one. Because, yeah, the first couple of minutes are kind of yikes.
Third world populations are exploding, but European people aren't having kids.
European people, you mean white people? I'm pretty sure you mean white people. But yes, third world populations are exploding because of lack of access to abortion and birth control and contraceptives and things like that, where European people, white people and other people in developed nations have ample access to those things and have the ability to control when they have kids a lot better than people in developing nations do.
Well, not like third world and non-white populations. Our people are not even replacing
There it is, non-white populations.
themselves with mini-me's.
Oh, don't use Lord of the Rings, come on.
While certain groups openly rejoice in white people declining and think their group is
Certain groups rejoice in the decline of white people. I wonder what certain groups she's talking about. I have an idea, but I doubt they're going to outright say it. I'm pretty sure they're meaning the Jewish population. Near as I can remember, Red Ice TV was a Nazi channel that doesn't think too kindly of the Jewish population of the world and thinks they're trying to take over the world. So that's a little telling.
genetically superior and that white people are somehow broken because they don't have 8 kids, the root cause is far more complex, but also very obvious. Reasons why white people aren't having kids. Number 1, feminism.
Yes, feminism is the reason why white people aren't having kids. It has nothing to do with finances or the fact that we can choose to not have kids. But yes, feminism is destroying America.
So-called liberated women have chosen to prioritize school and a career over a family. And even the women that try to do both don't have many kids, and if they do, they're usually stressed out.
Well, I mean, yes, I know from personal experience, having kids is stressful and very expensive. Like single income. And women are allowed to have careers and pursue education. They don't have to be barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen 24/7 like they were back in the 50s. They actually have the right to have options nowadays. It's fun. It's neat. It's nice.
2, climate change propaganda. For years, fake environmentalists blasted messages
Fake environmentalists. Oh my god, you mean the majority of the scientific community?
telling us that it's immoral to have more than one child. They still do, even though we aren't even replacing ourselves. And in fact, you should do your part to save the planet by not having any kids at all. This message, as seen on countless magazine covers and articles, always features white babies in it.
Man, you really have a problem with just white people not having kids. The world is I wouldn't necessarily say overpopulated, because we have a lot of empty space that isn't being utilized. However, the fact that we have almost, I think, over 7 billion people on the planet. What is the world population right now? I don't want to be wrong. World population. Oh, almost 8 billion. Wow, I was almost 2 billion people off. So we have almost 8 billion people on the planet, and the majority of the resources that we do use end up going to waste. We throw away, I believe the statistic, and I'm not 100% sure on this. I know it's quite a lot. Almost half of the food that we manufacture in the first world just ends up getting thrown away or never making it to market because there are deficiencies in it. Peaches that grow a strange shape and might not sell. Slightly wilted greens don't make it to the market, even though they're perfectly good to eat, and we throw away a lot of food because it's past the sell-by date, even if it is perfectly good to use, because companies don't want to get sued for selling potentially bad food. And that's just food. There are many other resources that do end up getting wasted. The world isn't necessarily overpopulated, but the way that we utilize and waste resources is killing the planet with the population that we have now. And I know you're super mad that it's only white people that aren't breeding the way you want them to, and you think that it's part of some sort of white genocide. But until we figure out how to stop wasting shit and killing our planet, maybe not having so many kids is a good idea. And considering I just Googled it, having almost 8 billion people on the planet, we aren't facing any sort of extinction anytime soon.
Image, yet they don't discourage large families among non-Europeans in the West or the third world populations. No, it's immoral to not let them have a big family living it up in the Western world with lots of stuff.
Nobody's telling that non-white families to have more kids and telling white families not to have kids. The media consensus or not consensus, but the message that you're focusing in on here is that maybe we shouldn't have 8 kids per family because of how many resources we're wasting, and it's kind of our fault that non-white people living in developing nations don't have access to the media that is pushing this quote-unquote narrative that you're saying, because through Western imperialism, we've kept them in a perpetual state of poverty, so they don't have access to the same media in many cases that we do, so they aren't receiving the same message. So no, this message is being delivered to white families and nobody else. It's not like the cable provider or the internet provider is looking into the name of the person that has their service and being like, well, we can't show this particular video to this family because they're not white. Nobody's doing that. I know you think they're doing that. They're not doing that.
Greece is good, but Greece is no give me home and no have food. I stay here. Like one year I stay here and no give me home, no nothing here. I want to go another country.
In my opinion, 80% of the Syrians will stay here in Sweden. When I was in Syria, actually, I had just a Nokia, like a cheap phone. But now I have an iPhone. Here we have like money, job, school.
3.
Yes, there are opportunities in Western nations because they haven't been completely exploited from their natural resources, and Syria is a war-torn country. It's perfectly reasonable for this guy to say, in Syria I had a cheap Nokia, living in Sweden I have an iPhone. Resources are much more abundant in those nations because of technological advancement and the fact that Sweden's not completely and consistently war-torn for the majority of its modern existence. And they also haven't been kept in poverty in Sweden. So going to Sweden, they would have the opportunity to acquire these things, which just simply aren't available to the average citizen in Syria unless they're incredibly wealthy.
Progressive globalist propaganda has been constantly
Globalist propaganda, I know what she means by that.
programming the child-free life to white women. You see it on magazine covers and TV shows constantly. Kids are
This is the second time you've said this, but we now have the option to not have kids, and women have the option to have a career. They don't need to be broodmares for to create families for men anymore. That's not the only purpose they serve in society. They have the freedom to do what they want now. If you don't want kids, it's perfectly fine to not have kids. There are plenty of people that do have and do want kids. I have kids. Well, I have a kid. But there are plenty of people that don't want kids, and that's perfectly fine for them to not want kids and to not have kids.
misery and they hold you down. The child-free life is freedom and a constant party. Sex in the City is where it's at. Yeah, just wait until these women are old and alone.
You don't have to be alone to not have kids. I personally know plenty of married couples that are just choosing not to have kids. Being old and alone is not the end result of not having children. You'll have more money, sure, and maybe you might not enjoy some of the aspects of life that kids bring, but if those aren't things that you want, that's perfectly fine. And I know you're framing this at white families are doing this, so there are plenty of people of color that are choosing not to have kids. Many women of color that are choosing not to have kids because for the first time in history, they have the option not to, and they get to have a fulfilling life. And if not having kids is fulfilling to you and having a very strong career and going on trips throughout your younger years in life is fulfilling to you, that's perfectly fine, and it's perfectly valid for you to do so. Also, if having either 1, 2, or a bunch of kids is what's fulfilling to you, you have the option to do that too. That's the great thing about the modern day and modern society, and the fact that we have access to birth control and abortion services if necessary, is we have the option to do these things, where in the past we didn't have that option. Especially women didn't have that option, and they were expected to just pop out children every 9 months so they can work the farm. We don't need 16 kids to work a farm like we did 100 years ago, 200 years ago, after the abolition of slavery, because we couldn't just own people and make them do it. So people would have a shit ton of kids so that they'd have enough farm hands to work the field. Now we have modern technology, which means a large multi-acre farm can be worked by 2 or 3 people with tractors and other technology. I'm not a farmer. I don't know how it works. But I just know that technology does play a role in that.
Birth rate in the United States has been in free fall for years, recently hitting the lowest level ever in American history. That means now about 1 out of every 5 women in their early 40s chooses not to have a child.
Oh no, 1 in 5 women. Golly, that's 4 other women that are still choosing to have kids. That's plenty.
In more and more cases, it's because women are choosing not to have children.
And the birth rate is in free fall because in previous generations, people were having, like I said earlier, a shit ton of kids so that they could either work the farms or, before child labor was abolished, work in factories to help pay the bills. Before child labor was abolished and before minimum wage was instituted, where you couldn't work for 16 hours a day for 25 cents an hour or whatever the fuck it was. That was not enough to support a family. You needed kids to go work in the factory too, so that you could afford the house you were living in.
Because their careers or their lifestyles, or because they just don't want to. And the trend is now the focus of the latest issue of Time magazine. You see the headline here, The Child-Free Life. I'm going to start with Rodica, because you have chosen not to have children, as I have. When I think back through my
Oh no, so scary. She chose not to have kids. I like the sound effect. That was pretty neat.
life, and I've never wanted to have children, even when I was a child. So I think, well, why would I want to have children? Like, oh, so they can take care of me in my old age. But that's selfish to me.
Yes, it's very selfish to only have kids for the purpose of having someone to take care of you in your old age. If we fixed our healthcare system in America, we wouldn't have to worry about making sure there's somebody that can bear the financial burden of paying for an assisted living home. When you get too old to take care of yourself, that would be provided by the taxes that we pay. We already pay a shit ton of taxes. Maybe have them work for us. You don't need to have kids. What is this? I took the batteries out of my biological clock and put them in my vibrator instead. Nice.
4. This one just doesn't make sense to me.
Is that some weird purity message they're slipping in there? What is masturbation evil? Come on.
But it's true for many people. The West has become wealthy and comfortable.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, give me some. Cut me a piece. Oh, go away, Baton.
Generally, wealthy people have less kids. They should be having at least 5, as they could easily afford it. Instead, an abundance of materialism
They should be having 5 kids. What if they don't want to have 5 kids?
usually makes them have fewer children. 5. On the other hand, I hear white people tell me, it's too expensive, they can't afford it. This one I hate hearing.
It is true. A lot of people are choosing not to have kids because of how expensive it is to have kids. It's if I didn't have the insurance that I have, it would have cost me upwards of $20,000 to have my daughter in a hospital. A lot of people can't afford $20,000. So people are choosing not to have kids for personal reasons. Some people are choosing not to have kids for financial reasons. Kids are expensive.
If your struggling, pioneering ancestor said this, you wouldn't be alive. Yes, I know
Yeah, that's because back then you didn't pay a shit ton of money for childbirth, and because it wasn't handled in a hospital. And that's part of the reason why the the death rate in childbirth was so fucking high. We have modern medicine to keep women from dying, or at least try to keep women from dying in childbirth, but it also costs a shit ton of money in America.
Europeans come to our nations, easily claim victim status, get welfare, and have 4 kids. And I know it's much.
You can't, I'm sorry, you, as somebody who's lived on public assistance for a brief period of time, you can't support a family of 4 on welfare. And refugees aren't coming here to live off of welfare. They're coming here to get rid of, to get away from war-torn countries and direct conflict. And the thing is, America doesn't take in a whole lot of refugees. Most people that apply for refugee status get turned away. But they're not coming here and living off of welfare and having 4 kids. That's that's just a narrative you're trying to push to make brown people seem bad. I know you're a white supremacist. You like white people, and brown people coming to this country is massively offensive to you, but there's nothing wrong with having other races here in this country. America's supposed to be a giant melting pot, isn't it?
Much harder for us to get help, but you can make it happen. You don't have to buy all the stuff you think you do. Chances are that you spend that money elsewhere already. Poor white people have always had many kids, and this was before welfare.
Yeah, back when you could buy a bunch of acres of land for a sack of potatoes. Property's much more expensive today. Having a house is much more expensive today. Food is much more expensive today. Most people don't have the resources or the knowledge or the ability to grow their own food like they did back in the day. Yeah, people had a lot of kids back then to work the farms that was in the family for generations. People don't have that today. And I'm sorry, I like my stuff.
6. The most important and damaging reason of all, white guilt.
White guilt is why people aren't having kids, babe. Did you know that?
We are being programmed to hate ourselves, hate our ancestors, and feel shame for being who we are.
We are not being programmed to hate ourselves, hate our ancestors, and feel shame for who we are. We're being asked to acknowledge that this country was built on the foundation of white supremacy, and that white people did own slaves, and that it was fucked up, and that maybe we should help the oppressed minorities that we put in these financial and social situations. But we aren't being told to hate ourselves. I've never been told by any person of color I've ever come in contact with other than like weird randos online, but I don't count that. Anybody in my day-to-day life, I've never been told that I should hate myself for being white. I've been told that I should acknowledge my privilege, which is perfectly valid because I do have a certain level of privilege in America for being white, just the same as a wealthy person has a certain level of privilege for being wealthy. Mine just happens to affect my daily life a lot more often.
We're told all white people are racist and that mythical white privilege and white supremacy is...
All white people have inherent racial biases that we should work to overcome. Not that all people are inherently racist.
Holding back world peace. All of these are disgusting hate.
Yes, white supremacy is holding back world peace because you guys decide to hate people that are brown and black because they're brown and black rather than for things that they do, just who they are. And that's fucked up.
Lies, but they have done damage in the psyche of white people, starting from a young age. We've been blasted with messages like this. White nuclear families uphold white supremacy, wanting to preserve your heritage and have...
No, promoting the idea of a white nuclear family is promoting white supremacy. The existence of a white nuclear family is not white supremacy, but promoting that as the apex of society is the white nuclear family. It kind of does sound like a white supremacist dog whistle, if you ask me.
Children that look like you is racism and world war. So we should welcome and celebrate white people dying out. Celebrate our...
Nobody's celebrating white people dying out. White people aren't dying out. You're just not the super majority in this country anymore, which is perfectly fine. I don't have a problem with black and brown people. The fact that you do makes it a problem for you. I don't have a problem with that. We just aren't the super majority in this country anymore.
Extinction from the face of the earth.
Whites will not be...
And we still are a majority. We just don't make up like 90% of the population anymore.
The majority.
Whiteness is a form of racial oppression.
New Sweden emerging. The immigration process coming to Europe is irreversible.
It's an exciting transformation of the country.
An unrelenting stream of immigration. Non-stop. Non-stop.
There can be no white race.
Oh man, super scary music over politicians speaking about immigration as if immigration is a bad thing. Immigration economically is a net benefit to this country. Culturally is a benefit to this country. You just find it scary because they're not white. Because you're a white supremacist.
Without the phenomenon of white supremacy.
Sweden is destined to become a multiracial, multicultural society.
And the wave still continues. It's not going to stop. Nor should we want it to stop.
Treason.
You know, some regressive shit that Joe Biden said decades ago is definitely an interpretation of how society today views immigration.
So whiteness is loyalty to humanity.
At this point in time, Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural.
Folks like me who were Caucasian of European descent, for the first time in 2017, will be in an absolute minority.
Oh, wow. This is 2017? Maybe I was wrong. Holy shit. Well, that's kind of fucked up, Joe.
The task is to bring this minority together in such a way.
I think the reason why I thought it was really old footage is because they downloaded this shit in like 440p and then put it in their video and made it look grainy as shit so it looked bad and was scary. But yeah, white people not being the supermajority in this country anymore doesn't scare me. I know it scares you. Doesn't scare me.
That it makes it impossible for the legacy of whiteness to continue to reproduce itself.
The legacy of whiteness. Holy shit.
Absolute minority. Fewer than 50% of the people in America, from then and on, will be white European stock.
My concern is doing away with whiteness.
That's not a bad thing.
Why is it a concern to do away with whiteness? The color of your skin should be irrelevant to how you interact with society. I know that it's not. We should work to change that, but it should be irrelevant.
That's a source of our strength.
And I think we're going to be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place.
It's one of the things I think we can be most proud of.
Europe is not going to be the monolithic societies that they once were in the last century.
Oh, super scary. Oh, man.
Not exactly ideal.
Using the First Order stormtroopers as a way to instill fear with their really shitty visual effects is kind of funny. You realize that the First Order was I don't know if it's a metaphor or analogous. I think it's analogous to the Nazi Party in Nazi Germany, correct? Their iconography, how they behave in formations, the things that they believe and say. Yeah, they were Nazis. George Lucas even said so. So using that kind of footage to push this narrative that there's some anti-white sentiment in the Western world, you kind of fucked up there.
Ideal condition for bringing up white children, is it? 7 more globalist lies, such as Western civilization.
When they say globalist, they mean the Jews. They are just using globalist as a dog whistle. I'm just letting you guys know that now.
Civilization wasn't created by Europeans, not by white people. Race doesn't exist. It's all a social construct.
Yes, race is a social construct. Race is basically decided based on the level of melanin in your skin and your country of origin. We're all from the same planet. There's more genetic variation between me and my wife, who is white, than there is between me and a black man. Or there's more genetic variation between me and another white dude that I work with than there is between me and a man who's black or a man who is brown. Race is a social construct.
So open the borders and welcome your replacements, the new Europeans.
Replacements.
Once you're a minority in your nation, nothing will change because people are all the same. Everything will go on as usual. No, in fact, it will be even better if there are less of you. Not exactly a healthy environment that inspires and encourages white people to have a family, is it? 8. Most parents aren't encouraging their daughters to get married and start a family in their 20s.
Yes, we're encouraging our daughters to pursue whatever they want. If they want to start a family in their 20s, they can. If they want to pursue a career in their 20s, they can do that too. And it's not scary and it's not bad. You're just framing it as bad because you want to push this traditional view of the white nuclear family and believe that women should be subservient to their husbands and be used only as incubators and food machines.
They don't even motivate why this is important and how it will make them fulfilled. If they do want...
Women can be fulfilled by more things than just shitting kids out every 9 months. My wife feels very fulfilled by having children, but not every woman feels that way. There are plenty of women that feel more fulfilled by having a very successful career, or being a public figure, or doing humanitarian work than they ever would having kids. And that's perfectly fine. Women are allowed to do things they want to rather than what society says they have to do.
Want their kids to have kids, they usually say, well, wait until after school. It should be the other way around.
Part of that is because supporting a family off of a single income in 2020 in the economy that we have is not feasible for most people. Not everybody had access to the same resources I do and made the same decisions that I did that allows me to support my family and allows my wife to stay home. Not because I make her or because I asked her to, but because she wants to. I've told her repeatedly if she wants to get a job, she can. However, having a college degree and having a successful career prior to starting a family is essential for most Americans today because you need 2 incomes for most people to be able to pay rent and buy food, especially if you have another mouth to feed. Both parties in whatever relationship you have, having a solid income before you bring a child into this world is very important if you want to have any sort of financial stability.
9. Our European governments are also not encouraging white people, their own nation, their own population, to have more children.
Stupid nationalists.
With the exception of Hungary, Russia, Poland, Denmark, places like Germany definitely don't. In fact, they say it's good their own people disappear because, you know, the Nazis. But then
They aren't saying it's good that white people are disappearing because the Nazis existed. There are still Nazis today. There are black Nazis. There are Mexican Nazis. There are Middle Eastern Nazis. Not being a Nazi is a frame of mind. It's not dependent on the color of your skin. It just so happens that more white people are Nazis than other races, because Nazis usually Nazism is dependent on white supremacy. But you have people like Jesse Lee Peterson, who is black. I believe it's Jesse Lee Peterson, who is black, who's a white supremacist. You can be a white supremacist, you can be a Nazi and not be white. But they aren't trying to get rid of white people because Nazis. We're just becoming more diverse.
Say, we need these third world populations of rocket scientists to take care of you when you're old. Don't incentivize having children among your own people, but instead bring in completely foreign and needy people from elsewhere, because that's going to work out great.
Because brown people can be educated too. A lot of the immigrants that we bring into America come in on H-1B visas because they're highly educated and proficient in the fields that they come to work in. Because education here in America is so fucking expensive for white people. And the fact that people from other countries can be educated and come to our country is what she's getting at here, and that's not a bad thing. She's framing it as a bad thing because they aren't white. But no, a lot of people that come to this country come over on work visas because they're highly skilled. People in America can become highly skilled too. It's just education in this country is so damned expensive that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do so.
Great. 10. The future isn't white.
No, it's not.
We're constantly.
Eventually, people are going to fuck so much that everybody's going to be some vague shade of brown. And that's perfectly fine. Brown babies are cute. They're adorable. My niece is very adorable. She ain't white. Both of them are. They're not white.
Told that this is inevitable, like a bad voodoo mind trick, that white people are going to die out, so just embrace it and rejoice. It's for the best that people like you don't exist.
This is not going to be the country of white people.
And you can speed that along by having kids.
Yeah, this shouldn't be the country of white people. It should be the country of people, regardless of race. That's what she was getting at.
Kids who don't look like you. Forget the environment and all that now, because no white people means cleaner air. Mixed race populations in the West are going to save it. Again, incredibly hateful. 11.
Incredibly hateful. No. The concept behind the argument that climate change and global pollution is a product of white supremacy is pretty valid, because it was for the longest time white dominant nations that were pumping out the majority of greenhouse gases and CO2 into the air. Now it's China and India. But that's due to manufacturing that benefits America and Western nations for the benefit of white people, because we have no problem keeping brown people in what's effectively slave labor. Yeah, it's a white people problem, and we should work to fix that. But it doesn't make all white people evil just because some white people are doing bad things.
Culturalism, diversity, and immigration. Our societies are less cohesive, less safe, and the hostility against white people is through the roof.
She says our societies are less safe, despite the fact that global crime has been on a massive downward trend for the last 30 years. And in the last 30 years is when we've seen these waves of immigration coming into white nations.
This doesn't make white people want to have big families, but in reality...
And if you look at that from an outside perspective, less white people has resulted in lower crime rates. Maybe the globalists have a point. I know she doesn't mean globalists. No, she means the Jews, but still.
It should give them every reason to have one. 12. I'm going to add religion in this list. European people are less Christian and definitely less pagan, and
Good. I'm vaguely pagan, but I consider myself an agnostic, but being less religious is not necessarily a bad thing. And Christianity, along with Islam, Judaism, and the other Abrahamic religions, are very bigoted. And if they're going to die out, neat. I mean, you can believe what you want as long as you're not using a religion to hurt other people. But I mean, just look at the Westboro Baptist Church. A lot of religious people that follow the Abrahamic religions use their religion to hurt other people.
This factors into fertility rates. It's why Muslims and Catholic Hispanics are having the biggest families in the West, with the exception of some European.
That's because Catholics don't believe in any form of contraception. When we were trying to address the AIDS epidemic in Africa, the Pope, not the current Pope, but the Pope at the time said that while AIDS is bad, condoms are worse. That's why religious families have predominantly Mormon and Catholic families have larger amounts of children. Is because contraception is considered evil. Preventing yourself from becoming pregnant as a woman is a sin.
European Catholics, Amish, and Mormons. 13. I know this rings true for many white couples who wish to have more kids. We've lost our village, our tribe, and our large extended families.
We've lost our tribe and our village as white people. That's not why white people aren't having kids. People aren't having kids because they're fucking expensive and because they want to do other things than just shit out children. There's nothing to do with losing our tribe. And white people never had a tribe, at least not in recent history. And by recent history, the last few thousand years. We haven't been a tribal population for the longest time.
We've become isolated and lost a folk community to count on, to help each other out, to back each other up. Once that changes, so will birth rates. The fact is, several of these things that I mentioned fall under the UN's definition of genocide. Don't believe me?
No, it doesn't. There's no such thing as white genocide. You're just scared of brown people because you fucking hate them because you're a goddamn racist.
Let's take a look. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, causing serious mental harm to members of the group. Yes.
Mental harm, okay.
It's definitely happening, and some physical, which people deny. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its...
People deny that people are assaulting white people? No. People are not denying that white people are being assaulted. We're just not being targeted specifically for the color of our skin. There are some people that do, but by and large, white people are not attacked for being white. Not in the same way that black and brown people are attacked for being black and for being brown, especially by law enforcement.
Physical destruction in whole or in part. Yes, happening. Measures intended to prevent births within the group. Yes, happening.
There have been no measures put in place to prevent white people from breeding. People in general are choosing not to have kids. The fact that white people make up a majority in these countries that you're worried about makes you believe that there have been measures put in place. But just because these white majority countries are choosing to have fewer kids does not mean that people are imposing their will to force white people to have less children. It's a conscious choice made by the individual.
So it's no surprise, considering these factors, that white birth rates are low.
Isn't that wolf in the background? Isn't that a dog whistle? I'm pretty sure using wolves in your iconography is a dog whistle for Nazis and white supremacy. I could be wrong, though.
Duh, it's not organic, done by design. White people have lost...
I just happen to see them in a lot of Nazi and white supremacist videos and images.
Their confidence and loyalty as a group. White globalists have made their own people enemy number one. They've become cannibals infected by a parasite, and they are completely blind.
Seriously referring to non-white people as a parasite? Are you serious?
To the hardship they are creating for our children. But of course, the most important thing, a lot of you watching are having many children, and all of this can be very temporary. It's up to you. Numbers will change. Don't let anybody lie and say it's not possible. Populations ebb and flow, decline, and can make a major comeback. That rise, that comeback is in our future, so get on it.
Yes, white people are making a comeback, guys. One big thing that we could do to change the birth rates in this country is making having a kid not cost 20 grand. That's a big reason why a lot of people are choosing not to have kids, is because it's so fucking expensive just to have one. Not to raise one, but to simply have a kid. If you don't have insurance, it's expensive as fuck. Alright, so I think we're just going to have some stock footage here of white families gallivanting around. But yeah, so that was Why White People Aren't Having Kids by Red Ice TV. That's That's a little bit weird. But, yeah, so, play some Dark Souls. We'll be right back.